Okay. I think we're going here. Just wait one moment. All right. 3 of you back, 4 of you back. Welcome, welcome. This is I think the most explanatory one that they gave, if you want to call it that. The psychological profile. Right. That's what you do. Don't GSR, don't DNA, don't test the other person that potentially was a missing suspect during a lot of this. No, do a psychological profile. Glenn B. How's it happening? All right. If only you've got 5. Well, 5's better than none. Oh, wait. Why do I have... Oh, yeah. Okay. April 28th. Now, there are a variety of versions I have of this. This was the one that was stuttering and farting. The CBC one. Right at the end. This was the one that they had. Hey, Rach, how's it going? Alex. This was the one that they had the powwow at the very end of it. Very odd about what relationship was Lisa. They didn't know a name by then, but what relationship? And there was a lot of back and forth. Between Clark and Campbell. But something funny happened with CBC. One, maybe I'll show you. Yeah, which version is it?
Investigation and what we learned at this
right here. I was like, what is going on with this version?
Of course, and carrying a long-barreled weapon, and I can also say that of course, and carrying a long-barreled weapon, and I can also say that of course, and carrying a long-barreled weapon.
I don't know, something funny happened with the CBC version, so we won't watch that, which is kind of unfortunate because I do believe that they do have the French translation in there. Sad, because Global didn't French translate, CPAC never does, and I think I may have a CTV version, interestingly enough. This one they did broadcast live, which was good. On the 24th, what they did was they ran the special that they had started working on before bodies had even been found or families notified. That was what they chose to air on the 24th. On the 28th, then what is the significance of the 28th? They pick certain dates, right? Like the June 4th one is Moncton. I think this one might be Emergency Workers' Day or something. Anyway, very interesting how they do all that. Anyway.
I'm Corporal Jennifer.
Okay, so let's get to Clark. It was April 22nd that we jumped on it being a real car and figured out Gabriel Wortman's path and timeline. On the 24th, they had to start backtracking. Yeah, honestly, those early streams, seriously, ones that Cage and myself and Tara and even like the first one, Tara's like, no, there's something really wrong with the story. Like the very first one. those are good things. Busy day. Well, I'm having a good day. Let's say. I remember her as, what's her name? Okay. Steve and Adrian. Yeah, we had some, and this is a big story. We can't let this one go because there's so much that hinges upon it. And if you don't clean these kinds of things up and just like our own lives, we don't take responsibility for them, things, then what are you going to do? You think you did okay. You did it right. That's the way it works. Okay. Enough pontificating.
I'm Corporal Jennifer Clark, spokesperson for Nova Scotia Rcmp, and I will be your moderator for this news conference. Bonjour et bienvenue. Je suis la caporale Jennifer Clark, porte-parole de la GRC en Nouvelle-Écosse, et je serai votre modératrice pour cette conférence de presse. Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Corporal Jennifer Clark, spokesperson for Nova Scotia Rcmp, and I will be your moderator for this news conference. Bonjour et bienvenue. Je suis la caporale Jennifer Clark, porte-parole de la GRC en Nouvelle-Écosse, et je serai votre modératrice pour cette conférence de presse. Today, Superintendent Darren Campbell, officer in charge of support services for the RCMP in Nova Scotia, will provide you with a further update on the investigation. Aujourd'hui, le surintendant Darren Campbell, officier responsable des services de soutien à la GRC en Nouvelle-Écosse, vous fournira une mise à jour supplémentaire sur l'enquête. A brief question and answer period will follow. Une brève période de questions et réponses suivra cette mise à jour. Superintendent Campbell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Corporal Clark. Before I begin to provide you with information related to the investigation and what we learned to this point, I just wanted to highlight that today is a National Day of Mourning. This is a day dedicated to remembering and honoring those who have lost their lives or suffered injury or illness on the job. The recent events here in Nova Scotia remind us that policing is an inherently dangerous job. And today, Constable Heidi Stevenson, who gave her life to protect her community, and Constable Chad Morrison, who was injured in the incident, are both very much on our minds.
And I think most people can understand now what he's talking about. The snow. The snow. You see it? Going on the whole time. Look at us. We're victims. Nothing to see here. Go away. Go away. Don't ask questions. You can't ask questions of victims. Maybe you can.
Thank you once again to everyone who bravely responded to intervene and to those who stopped to help them. Today is also a day to acknowledge the victims of this tragic incident. And I want to express my sincere condolences to all the families of the 22 innocent people who were killed at the hands of a gunman. I want to thank Nova Scotians for their support that they've shown all the families and to the RCMP. Having provided an account of the incidents this past Friday, my focus today is to provide you with an update on our investigation and the information that we've uncovered to this point. Any homicide investigation is a significant endeavor. In this case, we're dealing with 22 homicides. We have a sizable major crime team dedicated to the investigation, and we have engaged several support resources. In addition, we have experts across the country, and we're now receiving additional support from RCMP resources from across the country. We received support from external agencies as well, including the Canadian Armed Forces, the Halifax Regional Police, and the Canada Border Services Agency. I want to extend my appreciation for all the law enforcement agencies who have offered their assistance and their support. Our job now is to determine the actions of the gunmen on April 18th and 19th. Though the gunman will never stand trial, we will still have a duty to complete this investigation by the same standards that we would have if he was standing trial. At this time, priority areas for us are to determine how the gunman obtained access to the equipment that he used and to establish the gunman's movements before and after April 18th and 19th. We'll also want to determine if anyone had any knowledge of the gunman's plan, if any, and if they had assisted him in any way. We've been focusing on witness interviews, video canvassing, and judicial authorizations that allow us to obtain search warrants and records. This work has enabled us to gain a much better picture. To give you a sense of the scope of the investigation, to this point, we have identified over 435 witnesses, and at this point, we've interviewed more than half of those. There are many more interviews to come, and we expect the witness list to grow. Also, we've completed approximately 20 legal applications, and we have obtained authorizations to help us determine the acquisition of the equipment and the gunman's activities and movements. I should point out that Nova Scotians have responded to our tip line. Thank you to everyone who's called in and spoken with an investigator. I encourage anyone with information, regardless of whether or not you think that it's important or not, to please call the toll-free tip line and share what it is that you know.
Et maintenant en français. Avant de commencer et de donner des renseignements à propos de l'enquête et de ce que nous avons appris jusqu'à présent, je tiens à souligner qu'aujourd'hui est le jour de deuil national, une journée que nous nous sommes donnée pour honorer la mémoire de ceux qui ont perdu la vie, subi des blessures ou contracté une maladie dans le cadre de leur travail. Les récents événements survenus ici en Nouvelle-Écosse, le travail des policiers.
There weren't 400 witnesses. That was a bit of a misnomer on his part. There's 400 activities, you know, like different things to ask people, and you can have multiple. I think it only turned it out that there was 100 somewhat witnesses or something, but maybe not even that. No, that's not what the 400 was about. Bit of a fib.
C'est aussi une journée pour ramener à notre mémoire les victimes des incidents tragiques des 18 et 19 avril. Et je m'exprime mes sincères condoléances à toutes les familles des 22 personnes innocentes fauchées par le tireur. Je tiens à remercier les Néo-Écossais de leur soutien à l'endroit de toute famille concernée et de la GRC. Vendredi dernier, j'ai fait le point sur les incidents. Mon objectif aujourd'hui est de faire le point sur notre enquête et de vous faire part des renseignements que nous avons recueillis et assemblés jusqu'ici. Toute enquête sur un homicide est une entreprise importante. Dans ce cas-ci, il y en a 22. Nous avons affecté à l'enquête une importante équipe qui s'occupe des crimes graves et nous avons retenu l'aide de ressources spécialisées. Nous disposons d'experts d'un peu partout au pays et nous allons d'ores et déjà pouvoir compter sur le soutien des ressources de la GRC à l'échelle du Canada. Nous avons également reçu l'appui d'organismes externes, notamment les Forces armées canadiennes, la police régionale d'Halifax et l'Agence des services frontaliers du Canada. Je souhaite exprimer ma reconnaissance à tous les organismes d'application de la loi qui ont offert leur aide et leur soutien. Notre travail consiste maintenant à élucider les actes commis par le tireur les 18 et 19 avril. Le tireur ne fera jamais face à la justice. Toutefois, nous avons l'obligation de mener une enquête selon les mêmes normes que s'il devait subir un procès. Pour l'instant, nos priorités sont de déterminer de quelle façon le tireur a pu accéder à l'équipement qu'il a utilisé, d'établir ses déplacements des 18 et 19 avril et de déterminer si une personne était au courant des plans du tireur et si c'est le cas, si celle-ci l'a aidé de quelque façon que ce soit. Nous nous concentrons sur les entrevues avec les témoins, les séquences vidéo et les autorisations judiciaires qui nous permettront d'obtenir les fichiers et les mandats de perquisition nécessaires. Le travail que nous effectuons nous aide à mieux comprendre ce qui s'est produit. Pour vous donner une idée de la portée de l'enquête, nous avons identifié plus de 435 témoins jusqu'à maintenant et nous avons mené des entrevues auprès de plus de la moitié d'entre eux. Il reste beaucoup d'entrevues à mener et nous nous attendons à ce que la liste de témoins s'allonge. Par ailleurs, nous avons exécuté environ 20 demandes juridiques et avons obtenu des autorisations qui nous permettent d'établir les détails liés à l'acquisition de l'équipement ainsi que les activités et les déplacements du tireur. Je tiens à mentionner que les néo-écossais ont utilisé notre ligne InfoCrime. Merci à tous ceux qui ont appelé pour parler à un enquêteur. J'encourage toutes les personnes qui détiennent de l'information à appeler la ligne sans frais InfoCrime et à dire ce que vous savez, même si vous croyez que ce n'est pas important. Monsieur.
Okay, so what I'd like to do first off is I'd like to address some issues and aspects in and around the questions related to the uniform. From witness statements that we've learned that the gunman was a collector of many things, including police memorabilia, and he was in possession of multiple pieces of police uniforms from a variety of agencies. Many witnesses interviewed have spoken of the gunman's interest in the Rcmp, which dates back some time. We now know that on April 18th and 19th, the gunman wore parts of an authentic Rcmp uniform, including a shirt and pants with a yellow stripe. We also know that he had changed clothing while he traveled between the communities. We've yet to confirm exactly.
Oh yes, the changing pants. The pants that were in the escape, right? Think about that one logically for a moment. So let's say he did go to Gina's and then shoot her in the uniform. He then went back, he took off his pants to only put them into the escape. That doesn't make sense. How about taking your pants off in a vehicle over boots? Does that work? No. But Aaron did say he changed on the way. Where's the witnesses again? How about where's the uniform with the DNA tests on it? I'd like to see that.
Where or how he obtained these uniform pieces. This is an important aspect of our investigation, and this will take some time. We do know that surplus police uniforms can be available to the public through a variety of means, which include things like surplus stores, auctions, and online. With respect to the car, I'd like to address some issues in and around the police vehicle. We've learned through our investigation that the gunman's collection of police memorabilia included police cars. This was widely known. He didn't hide that fact that he had cars or memorabilia from people that knew him. However, at this stage of the investigation, we have not uncovered any information that the police had knowledge that he had possessed these vehicles or that he had possessed a replica police vehicle. Investigators have determined that all 4 police cars were former police models, and the gunman had acquired them through auctions within the past few years. With regard to the replicated police vehicle that he used on April 18th and 19th, we believe that he obtained that vehicle in the fall of 2019. And it was at that time that he outfitted it with the light bar and the decals. How he
Light bar? Decals? Tuning forks. How about all the other pieces? Motorola radio, reverse-facing radar cam, front one. You know, all those things, of course, that people get. Chips, you know, like tiny ones. Because somebody's going to see that. You need that for a car show. To show your friends. Right.
obtained these decals and how they were produced is an investigative detail that I can't get into, other than to say that we've made progress in this area of the investigation.
Alors, uniforme. J'aimerais maintenant parler de l'uniforme. À partir de déclarations de témoins, nous avons appris que le tireur collectionnait de nombreuses choses dans des objets de la police et qu'il possédait plusieurs articles d'uniforme de divers services de police. De nombreux témoins rencontrés en entrevue ont parlé de l'intérêt du tireur pour la GRC, qui date de longtemps. Nous savons désormais que les 18 et 19 avril, le tireur portait des pièces d'un uniforme authentique de la GRC, y compris une chemise et un pantalon arborant une ligne jaune. Nous savons également qu'il a changé de vêtements lorsqu'il s'est déplacé d'une collectivité à une autre. Nous n'avons pas encore confirmé l'endroit exact où il s'est procuré les pièces d'uniforme ni la méthode d'acquisition. Il s'agit d'un aspect important de notre enquête, lequel prendra du temps. Nous savons que la population peut acquérir des pièces d'uniforme de police excédentaires, et ce, par différents moyens, notamment les magasins de surplus, les encans et certains sites web. Véhicules. Je vais maintenant aborder la question des véhicules de police. Nous avons appris au cours de l'enquête que la collection d'objets liés à la police que possédait le tireur, notamment les véhicules de police, était connue de beaucoup de personnes. Il n'a jamais dissimulé le fait qu'il possédait les véhicules et les objets aux personnes qui le connaissent. Cependant, à cette étape de l'enquête, nous n'avons pas trouvé de renseignements qui nous permettent de penser que le policier savait qu'il possédait ces véhicules. Les enquêteurs ont découvert que les 4 véhicules de police étaient d'anciens modèles de véhicules de police et que le tireur les avait acquis dans les encans au cours des dernières années. Pour ce qui est de la réplique du véhicule de police qu'il a utilisé les 18 et 19 avril, nous croyons qu'il l'a acquise à l'automne 2019 et que c'est à ce moment-là qu'il l'aurait équipé d'une barre de feu d'urgence et des décalques. La façon de faire produire des décalques est un détail de l'enquête dont je ne peux pas parler. La seule chose que je peux dire, c'est que nous réalisons des progrès à ce sujet.
So what I'd like to do now is take you through a more detailed account of the gunman's movements on April 18th and 19th. This information has been established through the efforts of our investigative teams. At this point in our investigation, this is what we believe. If we can get you to refer to the first image. So after receiving the first 911 call, just after 10 o'clock, officers arrived in the Portapique area around 10:26 in the evening. This information gathered since the incidents occurred lead us to believe that the gunman had actually left the Portapique area through a field at approximately 10:35. So if you note there on the
Or he left through a field at 10:35. But that's based on the eyewitness? Oh, that became 10:45? Oh, sorry, the road is blocked. Don't you know? Like we were saying at the beginning. Of course you can tell. It must be him. those date and time stamps, and it's very clear. Don't you know?
The image that I provided, there was a witness that saw a vehicle that was traveling through a field, which was not very common. And what we've done is we've actually been able to determine through video evidence that the gunman had actually traveled a distance of approximately 26 kilometers, where he actually entered into an area in Debert, which is an industrial area. He arrived at that location at 11:12 in the evening. It's of great interest to us what the suspect or the gunman had done at that location, but we do know that he spent the evening there. We've searched that area thoroughly, but we are making a plea to anyone in that area, if they had seen anything suspicious, to please contact the police. We've obtained video evidence that shows that the suspect had left the area at 5:43 in the morning, traveling northbound on Highway 4 on his way to Wentworth. That distance was approximately 44 kilometers. Other video evidence obtained shows that the mock police vehicle is driving by a residence very close to the location where the gunman had actually killed 2 males and a female. And that happened at 6:29 in the morning. Video evidence also shows that the gunman had left the area at 9:23. We believe that the victims were killed shortly after the gunman arrived, more than 3 hours before that time. And it was near that time that the gunman had actually set fire to the residence. And it's established by the video in the area. The gunman then traveled south on Hunter Road towards Highway 4 for a distance of approximately 14.5 kilometers, where he encountered a female in and around the area of Highway 4 and Highway 224 at around 9:48 in the morning. He continued through that area from Glenholm.
Oh, but I thought it was phone call was 9:35. Okay. At least it was in your last press conference.
Towards Debert. And as I mentioned last Friday, this was the location where we received a 911 call about a male known to the occupants of that residence who was driving a Rcmp replica vehicle and wearing a uniform. That call was received at 9:48 in the morning, and that was within the 2900 block of Highway 4 in Debert. The gunman left the area, and he did not have any contact with the occupants of that residence. So he left the residence northbound in the same direction that he had come from on Highway 4. And approximately at around 10:08, we also see this the gunman's vehicle, just before 10 o'clock, traveling through towards the Debert area. It was at that point, around 10:08, when we received additional calls that the gunman was involved in another incident right near the area that I had described before, where the gunman had spent the evening previously. Okay.
Les mouvements. J'aimerais maintenant vous donner un compte rendu plus détaillé des mouvements du tireur les 18 et 19 avril. Ces renseignements ont été établis grâce aux efforts de nos équipes d'enquête. À ce moment-ci de l'enquête, voici ce que nous croyons. Après le premier appel 911 à 22h01, les agents sont arrivés sur les lieux à Portapique à 22h26. Selon les renseignements que nous avons recueillis depuis les incidents, nous croyons que le tireur a quitté Portapique par une chambre à 22h35. Nous sommes maintenant en mesure de confirmer que le tireur s'est dirigé vers un bâtiment industriel à Debert, où il est arrivé à 23h10, ce qui laisse entendre qu'il s'y est rendu directement de Portapique. Le tireur a quitté de Burt à 5h45 dimanche. Ce qu'il y a fait dans cet intervalle nous est un grand intérêt. Nous avons inspecté les lieux en profondeur et nous invitons toute personne qui aurait pu avoir vu quelque chose de suspect à nous contacter. À partir du quartier industriel de Burt, le tireur s'est ensuite rendu à Wentworth. Nous avons des images vidéo de lui circulant sur chemin Hunter vers 6h30, près d'une résidence où il a tué 2 hommes et une femme. Nous croyons qu'il est entré dans la résidence, qu'il a abattu les victimes, qu'il est resté à cet endroit pendant un certain temps. Dans la photo que je vous montre, on aperçoit le tireur quittant l'endroit à 9h35, puis reprenant le chemin Hunter dans la même direction qu'eux, celle par laquelle il est arrivé plus tôt. Il roule ensuite en direction sud sur la route 4 et traverse Wentworth. À 9h43, il est près de l'intersection de la route 4 et de la route 246. À 9h48, un appel au 911 indique qu'il se trouve à une résidence à Wentworth où il a frappé à la porte, mais n'y est pas entré. Des images vidéo le montrent par la suite, se dirigeant en direction sur le chemin des Plains Road à Debert à 9h57. De là, il se roule en direction est vers Truro sur la route 4. Des images vidéo le montrent qui traverse le centre-ville de Truro entre 10h15 et 10h20. Il ne semble pas s'être arrêté à Truro. De Truro, il prend ensuite la route 2 en direction de Millbrook. Voici une photo de lui à la caserne de pompiers de Millbrook que vous avez peut-être vue dans les médias. Le tireur est en train de retirer sa veste et d'enfiler un gilet réflecteur. Le tireur poursuit sa route en direction sud sur la route 2 jusqu'à Hilden. Des images vidéo le montrent près de la station-service Esso de Brookfield à 10h32. Les 2 prochains points d'intérêt sont ceux, notamment, où le tireur a rencontré le gendarme Chad Morrison et la gendarme Heidi Stevenson.
Those videos, I mean, still photos are just fantastic. Videos, I mean, stills.
Après ces rencontres, le tireur s'est dirigé sur une courte distance vers le sud sur la route 224 où il est entré dans une résidence en bordure et de la route. C'est alors qu'il a laissé le véhicule utilité sport de couleur argent qu'il conduisait derrière la résidence et qu'il a retiré son uniforme de policier. Comme nous l'avons mentionné vendredi, il a transféré ses armes dans le véhicule Mazda 3 de la victime de cette résidence, qui était une femme. Il quitte cet endroit, puis prend la route 102 vers Enfield. Nous le voyons ensuite alors qu'il quitte la route et passe près des appareils de paysage à 11h23. À Enfield, il entre dans le Big Stop. Depuis notre dernière conférence de presse, notre enquête a progressé de manière significative. 5 scènes font toujours l'objet d'une enquête à Port-à-Pic et sur le chemin Hunter. Les autres lieux ont été rendus à leurs propriétaires. La circulation dans la région de Port-à-Pic est toujours limitée. Les scènes demeureront réquisitionnées aussi longtemps que nécessaire aux fins de notre enquête. Comme je l'ai mentionné, nous avons reconstitué les mouvements du tireur grâce aux déclarations des témoins et à des analyses vidéo. L'enquête est loin d'être terminée, mais nous avons réalisé d'importants progrès jusqu'à maintenant. Encore une fois, toute personne ayant des informations à nous communiquer peut nous joindre via la ligne de dénonciation. Merci.
I can get you back to the Imogen DeBert to Truro, please. Thank you. So our investigations uncovered that from leaving the DeBert area at around 10:08 in the morning on the 19th, the gunman then traveled along Plains Road towards Truro, crossing through Onslow, which was a period or around 20 kilometers in total. We have him on video at 10, 16, 17, and 20, crossing through the Truro area. It's not our belief that he did not stop in Truro as he made his way through the city. From Truro, the gunman traveled south on Highway 2 for approximately 7 kilometers. It was at Millbrook at around 10:25 in the morning. Many of you have seen the video of the gunman exiting the replica police car.
Many of you have seen the video of him exiting the police car, don't you know? You know, the one that we cut the timestamp out. Oops, it was wrong. Oops, those goddamn people on YouTube pointed it out. Oops. Oh no. Wow.
Changing some of his clothing at that time, and that was at almost 10:30 in the morning. From Millbrook, we've been able to establish that the gunman traveled further south on Highway 2. We've obtained video of him crossing down or traveling down on Highway 2 south at 10:28 for a distance of about 6.5 kilometers. Our next photo shows him at 10:32 passing a gas station in the Brookfield area. From the Brookfield area, the gunman traveled again through Highway 2 for approximately 22 kilometers. It was at around 10:49 when he shot and wounded Constable Chad Morrison in the Shubenacadie area. And then shortly after that, within a few minutes, is when Constable Heidi Stevenson engaged the gunman in that immediate area. From Enfield, the gunman then traveled down Highway 224. As I'd mentioned before, he had stopped in at a residence of a person that he knew. He took that individual's life at that location. And of course, as I previously mentioned, he had switched his vehicle because his police vehicle, or that replica police vehicle, had become disabled. He was driving a red.
Oh, he makes a few errors here. Oh, his police vehicle, or the replica police vehicle, the red Mazda.
And of course, as I previously mentioned, he had switched his vehicle because his police vehicle, or that replica police vehicle, had become disabled. He was driving a silver SUV at the time. He changed that SUV. He discarded his police clothing, some of which was found outside the residence, some of it was found inside the vehicle. We also know that he had transferred his firearms.
Okay, so some of them it was found inside the vehicle. You mean like these pants? The crime scene photo of the pants? You mean like all of this stuff which has just disappeared? No DNA test. Perhaps that fell underneath the moratorium of destruction. The clean pants with no yellow stripe, with stripe, that's taken on the office floor. Not crime scene photo because you take your pants off in a vehicle, or, over top of boots, or, maybe you take the pants off outside of the vehicle, but then you're going to put them back in because you're being chased everywhere. Because that makes a lot of sense, don't you know?
From the silver SUV to a Mazda vehicle that belonged to his last victim. And then he proceeded south on 224 from that location.
Oh, see, notice how the Mazda, red Mazda, now suddenly became the Mazda. I think it may have something to do with that video. Oops. The one about the 24th.
He traveled approximately 22 kilometers from the Milford-Enfield area along Highway 102. And our last video that we have of the suspect crossing is at 11:23, where we see the Mazda exiting the highway.
Oh, yes. The what? Want to say it again? Sorry, what time was that again? What time was that again? Listen carefully.
Along Highway 102. And our last video that we have of the suspect crossing is at 11:23.
Like I pointed out, if you use closed captioning, 10, 10, and the photo, oh, that doesn't work. Timestamps video, way back when. It's wrong. But they couldn't cut it out because then they'd have to cut the car out. Aw. Oh, and who runs the weigh scale again? Oh, that's right. The Rcmp. Clock's off again, don't you know? Everybody got lists going of how many clocks are off and different times are being used and different time zones and videos that aren't working. Come on. You all are smart.
Where we see the Mazda exiting the highway and traveling towards the Irving Big Stop. Since the last press conference, the investigation has progressed quite significantly. 5 scenes are still being held, one of which is in the Hunter Road area and the remainder in the Porta Peak area as we continue our investigation. All other scenes have been released back to owners or family members. Traffic in the Porta Peak area is still being restricted. Scenes will be held for as long as we need them as part of this investigation.
Is that the scene that you're using the mini dozer to wreck it while the fireman is putting it out? Is that the one you're holding for all the crime scene analysis that you're doing? While the fireman's hosing it down?
As I've mentioned, we've pieced together the gunman's movements through witness statements and video canvas. There's still much more work to do in this investigation, but we've made significant progress to date. We're continuing to ask anyone with information to please call the RCMP tip line at 1-833-570-0121. And before maybe we take some questions, I just would like to clarify some information and some questions that arose from my last conference on last Friday. And it was a comment that I made with respect to a question about the assault on the common law spouse of the gunman. And I had described that as it's under a number of possibilities as to whether or not that could have been something that was a significant incident. And I think I used the word catalyst. I would like to clarify that my meaning of that word catalyst is that it was the first significant assault through the course of the events that unfolded that evening. I do not want to leave anyone with the impression that the victim of that assault had anything to do with the gunman continuing on with his rampage.
See, this is a very good point. Because if you think about it logically, let's see. What is it that they say? They say that Angel says, don't do the commitment ceremony. And this pisses Lisa off, right? So that would infer that Lisa wants to do the ceremony and she gets angry with Angel. So therefore, Wortman, he responds, well, not getting upset with Angel. No, might as well go after the person who wants to marry him. Huh? Logic flawed. Story poorly built. Nobody does that. Just like you don't go after the person that you're going to assault, right, in a domestic violence, but not harm them. Slipping in gas. I don't want to put on the handcuff. Can I get my purse? Etc., etc. Only to go on to murder everybody else. Right.
The wording, the catalyst, was used to express that that was the first victim in the series of very horrific events. And I want to be very clear that violence against women is intolerable. It's real, it exists, and I don't want to be misunderstood that the victim had any blame in relation to what had occurred or transpired on those awful days.
How much did you test again? Did you do the GSR tests? Did you run a pros? How about a CPIC? You know, because the person who lived in that household was missing all during this time. Did you run DNA? Did you? Did you bag hands? Did you do the normal investigative thing? Because if the person was missing who cohabitated with that person during a whole bunch, a crime spree, one would want to either eliminate them or figure out were they involved. That involves investigative procedure. Were those things done?
Do you want to start with our questions then?
Thank you.
Je veux juste un moment, s'il te plaît. Une clarification avant de répondre aux questions. On m'a demandé si l'agression et la fuite de sa petite amie avaient été les déclencheurs de ce qui a suivi. L'enquête n'indique pas que ces éléments aient été les seuls facteurs à l'origine des événements. J'ai utilisé le mot catalyseur pour nous donner une image plus claire de la menace en cause et pour nous mettre au fait de ce à quoi nous avions affaire exactement et de ce à quoi nous devions porter attention. En tant que service de police, nous savons que la violence fondée sur le sexe existe et nous ne ménageons aucun effort pour lutter contre celle-ci. Comme catalyste, je dis que c'était le premier incident dans une séquence des incidences. Ce n'était pas la cause, mais c'était juste le premier événement dans une séquence. Nous procéderons maintenant à la période de questions. Nous vous demandons de vous en tenir à une question et une autre de précision. We will now proceed with a question period. We ask that you limit yourself to one question and one follow-up, please. We will go to the phone lines now for questions. Operator, you may go ahead.
Thank you. Merci. Please press *1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. La première question, the first question is from Kayla Hansel with CBC National News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hello, Superintendent. Thank you for this information today. I want to ask you about why your officers were on the road during this course of events alone. It seems that certainly by the time Constable Stevenson and Morrison were planning to meet up, you had some clear idea of what you were potentially facing here. So we're wondering why your officers had not doubled up or partnered up at this time.
Okay, well, thanks for your question. What I can tell you is that all of our officers weren't alone. We do have some of our police vehicles which have single officers within them, and then we have others that would have what we would call a two-person car. I can also confirm that there were several other resources in the area where there were more than one tactical resource in vehicles as well. Often what happens in situations like this is that our Operations Communication Center is coordinating with the Critical Incident Commander, and as we know information, we'll also set up perimeters in the area. So all those officers that were out there were needed within certain areas. But again, as I said, not all of our units were manned by one police officer.
I'm also wondering what you can tell me about the role of the CBSA that you mentioned at the beginning of your comments.
So I can't get into exactly what their role is. I mean, I think that I had answered a question last Friday with respect to the origin of some of the weapons that we're looking at. We are looking at origins from within this country and also outside of the country. So of course, obviously, for anything that would deal with anything that came in from another country, we would require the cooperation and assistance, and we would have to work collaboratively with CBSA on that front.
Thank you. The next question, la question suivante, is from Shaina Luck with CBC News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Good afternoon, Superintendent. You've said that a full review is done after every critical incident. I'm wondering, what can you tell us about who's conducting this review? Is there anyone external to the RCMP playing a role there, and will it eventually be handed over to anyone else?
Okay. So, I mean, there's always a possibility that external review. So, for example, a critical incident that involves serious injury or death of one of our officers, ESTC will do an independent investigation of that. As I mentioned before, as well, when there's a police involved serious injury or a death to an individual, there's an independent body that will come in this case in Nova Scotia, it's CERT. They will also do an independent investigation of those circumstances surrounding that event. Specific to critical incidents, we debrief all critical incidents in the RCMP. The critical incident commanders will do a debriefing post the critical incident, as well as the psychological debriefings that are done. Any major event in the RCMP that unfolds where there's questions asked, I can guarantee you this organization is very alive to and actually exercises internal reviews, and then at times, if it's warranted, external reviews will be done as well. There's been some talk about, and I've noticed this in the media, I've been following it as well. People are calling for inquiries. That is another form of an external review. So all of these things, these mechanisms can take place to look at exactly what happened and determine exactly what roles every person played, the decisions that were made, and other things like that.
Thank you. And secondly, can you tell us what, if anything, have you found at the shooter's Dartmouth properties, his home and his business?
Well, I can confirm that we've searched his home and business in the Dartmouth area. I'm not going to get into specifics, but it does appear that the gunman had, I wouldn't say vacated the property, but he had left the Dartmouth area for a period of time, and it appeared as if he was mainly using the Portapique residence as his permanent address or his more frequented address at that time. But I can't get into specifics in terms of what we found.
Thank you. La question suivante. The next question is from Todd Badis with CTV News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi, Superintendent, and thank you for your time. I'm wondering if you can tell us whether investigators have had the opportunity to talk to the victim of that initial assault and what that person has been able to supply RCMP in terms of the investigation.
Yes, I can confirm that we have had the opportunity. In fact, we've had a number of opportunities to interview that critical witness. We intend on conducting further interviews. I'm sure that you would appreciate that given the closeness that that individual had to the gunman, she is a critical witness, and it will take some time. We are going to spend our time with her. We want to understand everything that she knows. And again, like any witness, sometimes the pieces of information that individuals think are too small. Well, our intention is to be able to get every piece of information from her, so that will assist us on our investigation.
And just to follow up, if I may, have investigators spoken with anyone in the United States?
I can confirm that we have, yes.
Thank you. La question suivante, the next question is from Stuart Peddle with the Chronicle Herald. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hello, we were wondering about the explosions that witnesses had reported, and we had heard rumors that they may have been armed with grenades. I wonder if you can explain or provide information about whether he had explosives.
So what I can tell you is, unfortunately, given the state of the gunman's residence, our ability to fully understand all the evidence from that location is limited due to the damage. But we have obtained statements from individuals that knew the gunman, and there is information that is consistent with part of your question. In terms of explosion, some of our witness statements indicate that the gunman had purchased some ammunition or had possessed a significant amount of ammunition. And as those residences are burning, some of that ammunition was more than likely igniting and potentially exploding. So that could be one of the reasons. I mean, a full investigation into the actual arson of those residences is underway, and we'll understand more as that analysis is done and the reports are finalized.
My second question would be to follow up from previous caller. You mentioned you had spoken with somebody in the U.S., but you didn't go any further than that. Could you clarify or expand on that?
I can't expand on that right now. It's part of the active and ongoing investigation, and it's a piece that right now, unfortunately, I can't share with you.
La question suivante. The next question is from Brian Hill with Global News National. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous. I'm sorry, Mr. Hill. We're unable to hear it this time. If you have a question, please go ahead. Your line is open. Unfortunately, we are unable to hear you. Hearing no response, we will move on to the next questioner, which is Michael Tutton from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Good afternoon, Inspector. Can you please describe any prior history of domestic abuse by Mr. Wortman against women or his partner? Have you uncovered any prior, and how much extensive it was?
So as I've mentioned, we're speaking to everybody that knows the gunman, and of course we're not just focusing on the events of April 18th and 19th. We're obviously working backwards from that. And we have spoken to witnesses who have provided information to us about prior assaults. Those are all things that we are dealing with right now. And as I mentioned in a previous question, the common law spouse of the gunman, those are items that we're working through with her right now to have a better understanding of that.
Yes, didn't Maureen call in an incident, according to her? So there should be a file. Where's that? There should be a file. Police responded, according to her. Where is that?
And I'm going to ask a follow-up question, but please clarify if you mean domestic assaults. And in addition, can you tell me what evidence, if any, there was from the investigation that perhaps misogyny or hatred of women was involved in his targeting of women during his rampage?
So what I can tell you is that I'm not aware personally of any information that has come in to the investigative team specific to misogyny or hatred towards women. But I think what I can probably do, and I'm certainly not downplaying the fact that several women had died through the course of this tragic series of events. But 11 men died and 14 women. Far too many people had died, but it doesn't appear in terms of what we've seen that he was purposefully targeting women. It appeared as if he was just targeting individuals that either he knew or individuals for whatever reason that I don't think any of us will ever understand or comprehend, that when he came across those individuals, that he killed them. It's completely senseless, but I can confirm, those numbers in terms of 11 men and 14 women.
Thank you.
I should maybe stop for a second and just clarify that when I say victims, I'm talking about individuals who were injured, either killed or injured. So, for example, last Friday I had mentioned that there was a male and a female who were driving in a vehicle leaving the Portapique area, and when the gunman had pulled up beside them, he fired into that vehicle. That individual was injured, he was wounded. So I'm talking about those who were wounded, like Constable Morrison as well. So they're included in those numbers. And if it makes any difference to anyone, I can also confirm that the government not only killed people or shot at people, but he also killed animals and pets that were at the residences or either wounded them.
Thank you. La question suivante. The next question is from Brian Hill with Global News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi there. Apologies for getting disconnected earlier. I'm just wondering if there's any more details you can provide us in terms of those individuals who were targeted that the suspect or the gunman knew, specifically why he targeted them. We know there's a history of property disputes. So we're wondering if you have any more information on the specific reasons why individuals were targeted.
So I don't have access to the finer details of that, but I'll agree and confirm with you that there was certainly a fairly sizable amount of information that there were individuals who had had a number of disputes with the gunman over a certain period of time. And it appears to be a lengthy period of time. That included everything from associates to business partners to family members. I can't really provide much detail right now. We're trying to understand that. Our investigators are trying to trace back to determine whether or not there was any motivation, but it just appears as if like it was a completely senseless series of very violent acts, and we're trying to understand that as best as we can.
And just as a follow-up, there's been a lot of talk about the emergency alert system and the fact that it wasn't utilized by the Rcmp. People have criticized the fact that it wasn't used. I'm just wondering, are there any protocols in place that tell Rcmp officers in Nova Scotia when they should request that an emergency alert be issued? And if no protocols are in place, what are you doing to remedy that now?
Okay, thanks for that question. What I can tell you is that, as I had mentioned last Friday, I've been a police officer for almost 30 years. I have myself never witnessed or been a part of a critical incident where the emergency alert system was used. But what I can tell you is that we're certainly very aware of that issue, And we are conducting a full review of that system, and we're in conversations with not only the province, but also the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police on that particular issue.
Thank you. La question suivante. The next question is from Paul Vieira with the Wall Street Journal. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi. Good afternoon. I want to be clear on something. You said, or at least I thought I heard, that the suspect may have left Port-au-Pique driving through the woods. Did I hear correctly? Is that how he was able to avoid law enforcement? Is it estimated that he left the Port-au-Pique area before police arrived?
Well, I would say that based on the call detail records that we have through our operational communications center, it shows our first unit arriving on the scene at 10:26 in the evening. And since that time, we've obtained a statement from an area resident that believed at the time that they saw a vehicle moving through a field was at around 10:35. So there's a...
Well, that doesn't work. Oh, then it came 10:45. But that doesn't work. Dean Dillman sitting at the end of the road. Oh, but maybe it's all of the witnesses that heard multiple gunfire going off. How about your own members? How about their testimony or their statements? How about that? It keeps saying that gunfire is going on throughout the night, even after the kids are gone. How about that? Oh, we thought we heard gunfire down south, so we started to walk down that direction. Not we thought, we did. No. All throughout the night. What's going on? Even Darren's affidavit. What's he talking about? His own affidavit. This man, his own affidavit. So why is he continuing, or why was he pushing this narrative back then? Multiple shooters. There was multiple shooters. There's a report of it, including on, I believe it's from, no. I don't know that if it's from his own members. There was a witness who came forward who said that. I think I know of 4 independent witnesses who have said that now. And frankly, if it's coming from your own members, additionally, I'm probably going to go with that shooting was going on all evening. And that it was moving around from locations like south on Caboquit, where there was no fire. So it wasn't explosions. No. And that's coming from, oh, right, your own members. Okay.
Approximately a 9-minute period of time. We're talking about a 4-kilometer area. As I mentioned last Friday, there were several victims and several structure fires at that time. But it's our belief, based on the distance that the gunman had traveled to the Debert area, as well as the timestamp of the video that we've obtained, that he definitely would have left that area at that time. That would be...
Oh, he definitely left. Don't you know? Sounds like Burl at the Mass Casualty Commission. For sure, you can tell that this is him. What are you talking about? You're going against multiple witnesses, including other RCMP people. What are you talking about? 24 to 28. I'm going to do a stream about some of that after this.
You know, certainly our understanding of the sequence of timing in the events that unfolded.
I think I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, la question suivante, is from Greg Mercer with the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Thank you. This question is about the investigation into whether or not the gunman received help in the lead up to these crimes. Are your investigators interviewing former RCMP officers about their relationship with the gunman?
What I'll confirm is that it's my understanding that the gunman was related to retired RCMP officers, and we've interviewed those officers, and we're continuing the investigation.
Where's the interview with Al again? Or is it Al? Noticeably absent. How about maternal? Anybody over there too? Maybe? Just maybe.
But at this time, what I'll confirm is that there's no indication that a former member of the RCMP provided assistance to the gunman or had provided them with any police equipment.
Oops. I don't know. According to Chris's statement, he said that he did. Lisa said that Chris did. What's he saying? Because I believe those interviews were conducted prior to this. Is that a fib? Is he telling a fib? Again?
Thank you. The next question, la question suivante, is from Alexa McLean with Global News. La parole est à vous.
Good afternoon, thank you. I'm just curious if RCMP have determined all of the weapons that were used by the gunman, and if he had a firearms license outside of Canada. We know that there may be some questions there about where these weapons came from. Did they come from the black market primarily? Just looking for an update here on the weapons used.
So in terms of the weapons used, I can't get into the details about those weapons outside of the fact that, as I stated on Friday, that the gunman was in possession of several semi-automatic handguns and 2 semi-automatic rifles. In terms of the caliber of those, I can't get into those details because the investigation is still active and ongoing. And you'd have to appreciate as well is that we need to be able to, as best as we can, associate those weapons through the ammunition used to the actual victims. So those efforts are ongoing. That was the first part of your question. The second part of your question was in regards to the United States or firearms acquisition certificates. Again, that's part of the active investigation, so unfortunately I can't provide you with any further details about that piece.
And just a quick follow-up, looking at the photos that were provided, there is 2 photos from the boat that are fairly dark, and through this briefing we now know that the gunman spent the night in Debert, so several hours between 11:30 p.m. and 5 a.m. in an industrial area. Just wondering why police weren't able to track him there, and what you've learned about this specific area that he stayed in, if these photos are of where he stayed in Debert for the night.
So those photos are where he stayed in Debert that evening, and you'll notice that those photos are both very grainy and they're very dark. It's because those photos were obtained when it was dark outside. So Debert that evening, and you'll notice that those photos are both very grainy and they're very dark. It's because those photos were obtained when it was dark outside. So that evening, and you'll notice that those photos are both very grainy and they're very dark. It's because those photos were obtained when it was dark outside. So just after 11 in the evening and just before 6 o'clock in the morning. That area is, it's not a very built up area. It's more of an industrial area. It's dark. What I can say is that that was an area that I would say the gunman probably had some area knowledge of. In terms of tracking the gunman, we don't know exactly what he did while he was there. We don't know exactly where he secreted himself or that police car or that replica police car. Those are all parts of the investigation that we're still trying to uncover, and that's why I've asked for any individual to come forward with any information if they saw something suspicious or they know something.
Thank you. The next question, la question suivante, is from Victoria Walton with The Coast. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. A lot of them have already been answered, but I am still wondering kind of about those key locations that the gunman went to. You mentioned, I believe, he went to a location in Wentworth twice, and we know that he was kind of observing and things like that. And can you just talk about why he may have gone to some locations more than once, as well as spent more time in locations and then traveled more quickly through others?
So I'm going to need you to clarify part of your question when you said that, you know, information about the gunman observing certain locations. You know, if there's something specific about that you know, I'd like to hear about it. Is the gunman observing certain locations? You know, if there's something specific about that you know, I'd like to hear about it. Is there anything that you can add so that maybe I can fully answer your question?
No, sorry. I just thought you had said on Highway 4, I believe it was, when he was in Wentworth, that he had drove by one location that he then returned to later.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's not a problem. Now I understand what you're asking. So when you traveled to the Wentworth area, it's our belief that the victims of that, the murder of the 2 men and 1 woman and the house fire, they were known, or at least the couple that lived at that residence were known to the gunman. That first image that is on that slide is an image from a house nearby that had a video surveillance system, and I believe that it shows the gunman passing by towards that residence where that offense occurred at around 6:30 in the morning. The second video surveillance photo that you see is approximately 3 hours later. That's from the same residence, capturing the vehicle leaving that area. As I indicated before, it's our belief that the gunman went to the victim's residence. We believe that the gunman took the lives of those individuals shortly after arriving. However, we believe that the gunman more than likely had stayed in that residence for a period of time before setting on fire and then leaving southbound on Highway 4 from that location.
Thank you, and thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. The next question, la question suivante, est de Héloïse Rodriguez de Radio-Canada. Please go ahead, la parole est à vous.
Bonjour, est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire si à ce moment-ci, le bilan des victimes est final ou si on s'attend à ce qu'il continue d'augmenter et combien de victimes sont mortes par balle et combien sont mortes dans les flammes?
Un peu lentement, s'il te plaît.
Oui. Pouvez-vous nous dire si le bilan des victimes est final et combien de personnes sont mortes par balle?
Though it's not translated, if I recall correctly, this is the question about the relationship between the person who came out of the woods and Wortman. And they have a very difficult time answering it. If I recall correctly, this is the one, and you'll see them, they go back and forth and they go off camera. seems to be a difficult one to answer.
Combien sont mortes dans les feux?
Un moment, s'il te plaît.
There's two parts to this one. I think it's their follow-up. Yeah, the first part is how many have died by gun and fire, which they messed up, and then suddenly said nobody died by fire.
Nous savons que 9 personnes ont été mourus par l'incendie et les autres par les balles.
Okay. Est-ce que c'est le bilan final ou vous attendez encore avoir d'autres victimes?
This is the part.
Non, nous savons maintenant que n'y a pas des autres victimes.
Merci. Et est-ce que vous avez, à la lumière de ces nouveaux éléments, qu'est-ce que vous pouvez nous dire sur la relation entre le tireur et la première femme qui a été agressée? Est-ce qu'on a plus de détails sur leur relation?
Parlez-vous de son petit ami ou les deux premières victimes? OK.
Non, c'est ça, la petite amie. Pouvez-vous clarifier s'ils étaient encore ensemble, s'ils étaient la nature de leur relation, si on a plus d'informations?
Notice Darren speaks French, right? He can understand.
Ils étaient des voisins.
OK.
Merci beaucoup. Juste une autre question, s'il te plaît. One more question, please.
Thank you. The next question is from Charles Hatch with Canada's National Firearms Association. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hello, Superintendent. Thank you for taking my question. Many of my questions have already been answered by the previous reporters. I do have an outstanding question, which is, was the murderer in possession of a so-called military-style assault rifle?
What I can say is that there was what would be considered a weapon that could be described that way, but I don't want to get into those details because as you may know, as we move through the investigation, we talk to witnesses, establishing the credibility and the weight of the information that they provide to us is very important. And we do that through them providing us details that are not widely known by many. And that's why we can't disclose those details right now.
Okay, fair enough. Can you say whether or not that so-called military-style assault rifle was actually used in the rampage?
Well, I can't at this point at all talk to you about too many of the weapons. I do know that witnesses did describe seeing the gunman carrying a long-barreled weapon. And I can also say that, of course, Constable Morrison, as well as the other surviving gunshot wound victim that was leaving the Portapique area, described that the gunman had shot them with a handgun.
Very good. Thank you for taking my question.
This concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse. Merci pour votre présence. Thank you for attending.
Yeah, that question was a weird one. I remember when we were streaming it and asking about what all was going on at the time, and the question they didn't they had problems answering it. And then if you couple it with that original story and the things that were coming out originally, thank you very much. So they asked if they were in a relationship, but she responds, they were neighbors. So, what's that about? Okay, so I don't have all my stuff together, but frankly, I like to have everything kind of lined up, but we can just kind of wing it because I just got to get rid of some of the stuff. And I've got something very old I need to deal with. Well, I've got really old stuff. But we'll get to that sometime. I know that one of them is somebody that wants me to do something and I haven't gotten around to it. So I like to make sure everything is right. Okay, so we're going to do another broadcast here on DeBert. I'm just going to read some stuff, leave it with you, see what you think. Thanks very much for joining me. I'll start a stream right after this about DeBert. God bless you. God bless the 23.